Welcome to Let's Talk Jets Radio.
What's up, everybody? Let's talk Jets training camp preview. My good friend Richie, what's up, man?
Hey, what up, Tyson? Appreciate you having me on the show, man. Excited to talk Jets with you.
Well, no, you're a celebrity now, man, because you just covered the Jeremy Ruckert signings. I mean, I got to thank you for your valuable time here.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, it was awesome. Shout out to the Jet Lounge for organizing that event and Matt O'Leary setting up all of his equipment, and I was able to be his co-host on that show. It was awesome. We interviewed his father. It was a great time.
How was his father? Pretty all fired up and stuff?
Oh, my God. I mean, if you watch it, I asked him, how does it feel? I mean, you're literally living the dream. Your son is on the Jets. You grew up a Jets fan. He's like, I don't know. None of this feels real. What is life? He's like questioning what life is because it still doesn't feel real to him. So he was an awesome personality, awesome energy.
That's awesome. Now, are you going to any of the training camp practices, or are you?
Yeah. I got tickets for the opening one, which is July 30th. That's Saturday. And then I'm also looking to go to the joint practices against the Falcons. So I'm really excited. Last year was great. The fans show up. It feels like a real game when you're going to that facility because the fan base is rabid. I feel like the energy is going to be even better because last year's training camp was so awesome and different because it was the first time fans can get together after the pandemic. So it felt like the energy was different. So I feel like this season is going to be even better because of the off season that we just did. And I'm excited to chop it up with you about it because I'm so amped up for training camp.
Yeah, and you see the practices minus the green and white scrimmage are all sold out. So the fans are definitely all in. You have, year 2 of Saleh, year 2 of Wilson, which is great. So I can't wait. I can't wait for preseason games, to be honest with you. I just want to see, guys hitting each other. So first, I guess the first question is, what do you think is going to be the biggest storyline as the guys get ready to report going to camp? What's the biggest Jet story right now, do you think?
Well, I think the biggest story for the entire training camp, the entire season, is always going to be about Zach Wilson over anything else because he is the most important guy on this entire team. I mean, he plays the quarterback position, the most important position in all of sports, in my opinion. So when it comes to Zach Wilson, how does he look in camp? Is he processing things quickly? Is he making mistakes, but is he learning from the mistakes, right? We can't expect him to be completely clean and just be an animal in training camp. That's not going to happen. He's not going to light it up. He's going to have a really good day. He's going to have a really bad day where the media is going to be like, oh, Zach Wilson struggles, throws 2 interceptions. Like, that's going to happen. So prepare for that. But what I'm looking for Zach Wilson is he going to learn from his mistakes? Is he going to look like a little different than he did as a rookie? Because when you're a year 2 quarterback, especially being that number 2 overall pick, you're expected to make a big time leap. Now, I'm not expecting to become an elite quarterback this season, but there's no questions that he has to definitely improve this season.
I 1,000% agree with you. I think the other thing for me is, and we kind of started seeing some of this offseason, is emerge as a leader, become the focal point of the offense, have guys kind of gravitate to you. Be that guy where it's like, he's our quarterback, he's our guy, have command of the huddle, get in, get out. You know what I mean? That's something that I think all this camaraderie is experiencing over the last couple of weeks of going to Idaho with his teammates and going out and hanging out with Braxton Berrios. That goes a long way, man. I think that's going to help him take the game to the next level as well.
I couldn't agree more. I feel like him developing those relationships off the field is going to translate to the success on the field. And it really speaks volume to Zach Wilson as a person. We saw him take the tour around the country, going to Nashville to train with Corey Davis, to Miami with Braxton and Michael Carter. And then where did he go? Arizona, I think, with Denzel Mims and Jeff Smith and Elijah Moore. So he did that. And then he takes a lot of his teammates to a ranch in Idaho in the mountains, and they're training. And they're also doing things outside of football. They're playing golf. They're on a boat. They're wakeboarding. They're doing a lot of fun things. And that really shows you how tight this group is. And it also tells you what type of quarterback Zach Wilson is and the type of person he is, because he understands how important it is to learn these players, not only them as football guys, but them as people, where their values at, what type of friendships they can build. And I love everything I'm seeing from Zach Wilson so far this offseason.
Yeah, I think that's enormous, man, especially with the young team and all these personalities. You get on the same page, same wavelength, so you know their tendencies, what their mood is, what their personality is. Like, it's so important, man, for a young quarterback to establish that, especially with other young guys around you that are impressionable. Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore, Michael Carter, a lot of young guys, man. So if he can mold that, they're all going to grow together, which is pivotal, and it's exciting, man. Like you look at this team, and like a lot of my friends ask me, like, oh, what's your take on the Jets? And every year you try to justify it. Like, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. But this year I actually believe it because they have so much young talent where it's like, it's legitimate and they have depth. So if you had to say there is, a person that's kind of on the hot seat going in the training camp, or a couple players that you say, what, this could be a make or break camp for these guys.
Yeah, I think it's two players from the same exact draft class, that being Mekhi Becton and Denzel Mims. Mekhi Becton has been in the news for a while. Obviously, we all know what happened with him. He goes down with a season-ending injury week number 1, and then throughout the entire offseason program, he was not showing up because of the birth of his child, which we understand. Shows up to mandatory minicamp, but apparently there's rumors that he's out of shape and close to 400 pounds. So it's really going to be all about Mekhi Becton this camp to really prove to not only the fan base, but to the coaching staff that he's in shape and he's all in and he's available. Because I think there's no denying that Mekhi Becton has all the talent you need. The only problem with him is, can he stay on the field? Can he stay healthy? I think that's the only thing that's holding him back, because people cannot forget what this man did as a rookie. He was going up against top-end talent at the defensive line, like Aaron Donald, both the Bosa brothers, as a rookie, and held his own. So if he can replicate his rookie season this season and play, on the field, then I feel like it's going to be a great thing. And then Denzel Mims, he's not really a guy that's being talked about a lot, but I feel like this is a really pivotal training camp for him in particular, because this is his first offseason where he's actually healthy, first offseason where he participated in OTAs. Last year, he was sick with the salmon food poisoning, and that was a really big issue for him, because the OTAs, that's all about learning the playbook, learning the schemes, and people underestimate how important the OTAs are, especially for a new scheme. So for Denzel to go into year number 2 with the same system, he needs to be able to show the coaching staff that he could be a guy where his name is called, he could be impactful, because simply last year, he did not step up when his name was called.
Yeah, but both of them are fascinating to me. And going back to Becton just for a second, it's like, to me, I'm praying to the football gods he reports in shape and is ready to practice day 1. Because if that starts dragging out where he's missing practices, he's not where he wants to be, it's going to become a story. The other story is, then what do you do with George Fant because he wants a new contract? Do you pay George Fant as a left tackle or right tackle? Do you not pay him at all? Like, there's so many things that kind of plays out. It's all contingent on Mekhi Becton coming in shape. Like, and it's a weird topic, because if you say that, half the fan base gets pissed off of you. Oh, you're doubting him, this and that. But I'm like, the facts are facts. Like, we're all rooting for him. We want him to succeed. When he's healthy, he can be a dominant player. But he's got to be healthy. He's got to be ready to go. And that's just it. If he is, we can just roll. And there's no distractions. If you look at, like, this team in terms of training camp distractions, there's none, dude. That's the only story. Everything else is they're a young, exciting team. There's no divas. There's no headlines. There's no problems. There's nothing, dude. Like, it'd be a quiet camp, to be honest with you, minus that. So I'm rooting for him. I hope it pays out. Denzel Mims, I think, is in a tough spot. And the reason why is because there's so much competition ahead of him. And he doesn't play special teams. So he's really got to go above and beyond, unless there's, God forbid, an injury where whoever goes down, then he can kind of slide up. But I think he's got to have a phenomenal camp, man. It's great to hear that he's in shape, too, like in the best shape of his life. But he's got to have a phenomenal camp, or he may be like a trade candidate, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think he's going to be the Corey Davis backup. In terms of like that big-bodied outside receiver, where if Corey Davis unfortunately gets banged up for a game or he tweaks his hamstring and he's out like week to week, I feel like Denzel is going to be that replacement for him, because there's not really a lot of guys in the roster that has big body like Corey Davis besides Denzel Mims. So I feel like he does have value for depth purposes there, which is why I feel like he's going to make the roster, even though he doesn't really have any special teams value like a guy like Jeff Smith does. So I am expecting them to roll into the season with Jeff Smith and Denzel Mims both making the roster, with Braxton and Garrett and Elijah and Corey Davis. So we'll see how it all plays out. But there's no denying that Denzel really has to step up and prove to be why he's a second-round pick.
Yeah, and two guys that are coming back from injury, Corey Davis, you mentioned a lot, who, when he did play, was kind of disappointing with the drops and falling down and everything else. He was a captain, but it was like it wasn't what we expected for like the addition of him. And then Carl Lawson, who we have phenomenal, I love Carl Lawson, dude. I'm a big fan of his, and he's so disappointed when he gets hurt. But now it's like they're coming back, and they could also be in like make or break years, because if they don't really pan out, Joe Douglas, the way he structured the contract, they could be gone next year. So, what's a realistic expectation for Corey Davis this year? Do you think it's going to be a big bounce back year?
Yeah, I honestly think the only thing that's going to hold Corey back this year is health. If you remember last year, Zach Wilson's favorite target was Corey Davis. His first game as an NFL quarterback against the Carolina Panthers, 2 touchdowns, both of them to Corey Davis. He was his favorite target in preseason. Corey Davis was his guy, and Corey Davis was that reliable weapon. And I feel like he's a very underrated piece to this team because of his veteran leadership. He's kind of like that only guy in the locker room at that position group that is a veteran that's been in this league. He knows how to handle the first round pressure. Obviously, he was an extremely high draft pick for the Tennessee Titans. So he kind of has that, mentorship to a guy like Garrett Wilson, who has a lot of pressure on his shoulders. And I feel like the best thing about Corey Davis is we're not looking at him as the guy. Like last year, it was kind of like, all right, we don't really have anybody else. We're not going to expect Elijah Moore as a rookie to be the guy. So Corey, like we gave you a contract. Can you be our number one receiver? Even though we know like deep down, you're not really that type of guy. But now you add Garrett Wilson, you get Elijah Moore going to your number 2. You retain Braxton Berrios. It's only going to open things up for Corey Davis, even more, because he benefits the most when there's talent around him and he's not the guy, because he had his most successful season with the Titans when AJ Brown was next to him.
I could not agree with you more, man. Having that kind of veteran guy, like a high character guy, to help Elijah Moore and Garrett Wilson is invaluable, man. Like I know Braxton Berrios is kind of a veteran too, but like Corey Davis has been there, done that, had the pressure on him, had the big spots on him, and he's like, all right, you know what? I can show you guys what I do. So, and the team respects him. You can see obviously that he's a very well respected guy. And I think Carl Lawson's the same kind of guy, man, because you have all these young pass rushers. Like you have Jermaine Johnson literally learning from a guy that has ridiculous work ethic, has ridiculous skills. So to me, it's like his value obviously on the field is ridiculous pressure, great pass rusher, but also to mentor these young guys and do that as well. I think it's so for me, the expectation for Carl Lawson, obviously you want to get your 8, 9, 10 sacks, but I think they may rotate him a lot because you have all these guys. So I think you may get say 7 or 8 from him, but he's going to help these young guys, and just have a huge influence.
The defensive line is going to be so fun to watch. I mean, we're so deep. It's ridiculous. And we cannot forget what Carl Lawson was doing last year during training camp. I mean, we were like on cloud nine, like, all right, this guy might break the sack record. I mean, he might get 15
best I've ever
sacks
seen.
based on the pace that he's doing in training camp. And then, of course, the unfortunate situation happened in Green Bay during the joint practice. But I just really hope that Carl Lawson can be healthy, because I think that's the only thing that's going to hold him back, obviously, because that injury he had last year was serious. But the good thing is the injury did happen in camp, so it's not like it happened in the middle of the season. So he's going to be missing any time this year. He's expected to be full go by training camp. So I feel like him mentoring guys like Jermaine Johnson, a guy like Michael Clemens, 2 rookies, and having the veterans like John Franklin Myers, Quinnen Williams on the roster, adding Solomon Thomas. I mean, this defensive line potential is through the roof. And we all know that Robert Saleh's system relies on pass rush without getting to the quarterback on the edge. The system simply doesn't work, which we saw last year. We were last in the NFL. So it really, there's a lot of pressure on Carl Lawson, but not only him, that position group as a whole. So I hope that he could be healthy and provide that leadership and be impactful on the field. And, we're not expecting him to be that guy that we were expecting in training camp, being that 15+ sack. But like you said, 8, 9, 10 sacks, I think that's a very realistic expectation for him.
Yeah, I think he can have a huge impact, even doing, 50% of the reps. I think it'd be fine. And you work him in slowly, like the beginning of the year, you don't rush him back. And, mid-season, end of season, just you can maybe unleash him more and you'll get your full value for him. And the guy you mentioned earlier is Quinnen Williams, who I think is another, like, kind of like a boomer bust year for him, where we all love him, dude. We love him. We love his personality. He's a good guy. He gives you those splash plays where you're like, this guy's dominant. Then sometimes you're like, all right, where's he at? But then it's like, you know what? He's going to be due for a contract now. So it's like, to me, like everybody talks about build around Zach Wilson. You built around Quinnen Williams too, because now he has so much talent around him where he can just let it play. I mean, you have John Franklin Myers next to him. You talked about the outside rush. Your secondary is much improved. To me, Quinnen Williams is in the perfect spot to just dominate, dude. And if he doesn't, then it's like, all right, man, we gave you your best situation to make as much money as possible, but it may not be with the Jets.
Yeah, it's similar to like Zach Wilson. This is like, he has so much playmakers around him to the point where there's not really a lot of excuses for him, just in terms of, wow, there's a lot of weapons around you. Even though he's a young quarterback, so he's still going to be making mistakes. But what I'm trying to say is Quinnen Williams, I feel like this is his first time as a Jets defensive lineman where he truly has talent around him to the point where the double teams might not be going his way every single time. And even John Franklin Myers said in an interview that he thanks Quinnen Williams all the time because he has to have the one-on-ones while Quinnen has to eat up the double teams. And people need to realize that when you don't see Quinnen Williams dominating, you're wondering where he is. It's because he's the guy that's being double teamed. So when you get an edge rusher like Carl Lawson healthy and like a rookie Jermaine Johnson and John Franklin Myers another year in the system, it's only going to open things up for Quinnen Williams. And you're right, this is a contract year for him. If he wants to be paid either by the Jets or another team, this is his chance to shine. And he would admit it. He says it his own that he has not reached the potential that he believes that he can become. I mean, he's a 3rd overall pick. So the expectations for him was to be, one of the best D linemen in the NFL. The reality is he's like an average, above average defensive tackle, which I'll take. But we all thought when we drafted him, he's going to be this outworldly, best player in the draft class. I still think he has that in him because you see some games, and you mentioned it, Tyson, where he takes over the game. I mean, he has 2 or 3 sack game, and then you have like 2 or 3 games where he disappears, and then he has another game where he dominates. So if he can string a whole season together of being consistent, he's going to get paid, and hopefully it's by the Jets if he does do that well.
Yeah, 1,000%, man. He's in the perfect spot to get a huge contract if he plays well. And the really interesting thing is we talked about the draft, around the draft, the whole class. We're all excited about the draft class. And the really cool thing, I think, is that this draft class as a whole doesn't have a lot of pressure on him. Like these guys aren't coming in to be game-breaking talent to make us win week one. Like the whole class. Like we talked about Jermaine Johnson, but we say, you know what? We got Carl Lawson. Want to talk about Garrett Wilson? Well, we got Elijah Moore and Corey Davis. You got Michael Carter. You have all these guys. So is there one guy, I think I know who you're going to say, is there one guy that may have more pressure on him in this rookie class than anybody else as they go into training camp?
Into training camp, there's a lot of guys in this rookie class that I'm excited for. It might have to be Sauce for me, just because he is the first guy that we drafted. If you're a cornerback and you're being drafted at that 4th overall pick, just like we were talking about Quinnen Williams, we're expecting Quinnen to be an outwardly defensive tackle. If you draft a cornerback in the top 5, you're expecting him to be a lockdown corner. Now, we cannot expect him to be impactful immediately, like you said. And luckily for the Jets, we're not relying on these rookies to be impactful immediately. They're going to have their rookie pains. They're going to start off a little slow. Like, remember, Elijah Moore started off the season really slow last year. Michael Carter started off the season really slow last year. So did Zach Wilson. And then all of a sudden, halfway through the year, where they get used to the system, all 3 of those guys are really shining. So I think it's similar. A similar thing is going to happen with all these rookies. Sauce is going to get a little burnt a little bit early on. Garrett Wilson's going to have a little miscues. Even Breece Hall is going to struggle just a little bit. And Jermaine Johnson, I feel like it's going to take a little bit for them to get used to the NFL. I just want to make sure Jets fans don't expect, since we had this outwardly draft class who are being praised, which the draft class deserves the praise, we cannot expect these rookies to go out there and dominate immediately, like you said. So if there was one guy to look out for to get pressure, it is Sauce, because he has that, flash to him, and he has that aura to him that we are expecting this man to be perfect because of what he did in Cincinnati. But at the same time, that's unrealistic to be perfect in the NFL.
Yeah, that's very well said, man. You're killing it right now. But that's very well said, where it's just like we have high expectations. Jermaine Johnson's not getting 12 sacks this year. Sauce Gardner's not going to be all pro. Like, we got to keep it in reality. We want to see him play great, but there is going to be a learning curve, the speed of the game, learning the system, all these different things. There's going to be rough spots. But the really cool thing about that is if they struggle, there's guys behind them and around them that can pick up the slack. The cornerback depth is good. You still have Eccles there. You have all the other guys. So, if he struggles a little bit, you rotate him out, you bring him back in. You have veterans back there now. You have DJ Reed. You have Jordan Whitehead, guys that can help him. So I'm super excited about that. The other thing is there's a couple players on this team that could be poised for breakout years, where we saw some things last year, but now it's like, you know what? You've had time to get acclimated to Saleh's defense, Mike LaFleur's offense. Who are some guys that you think that have like a chance to really just step up and become stars this year?
I've said it so many times in my channel that if there's one guy that I'm predicting to be a star on this New York Jets team, and when I say a star, I mean fans around the NFL media are looking at the Jets and talking about this player a lot. It's that man right behind me, Elijah Moore. I feel like he is destined to break out. The only thing that's going to hold him back, and that's with anybody on this roster, is health, because that's what really held him back last year from breaking out. His 5-game stretch that he had in the middle of the season last year, if you stretch those 5 games into a 17-game span, the stats kind of look unrealistic. It's like 14 touchdowns, 1,400 yards, like 80 receptions. And like, I'm not expecting him to put up those numbers. But what I'm trying to say is if Elijah Moore did not tweak his quad after those 5 games and he finished off the season and finish off with that pace, we'd all be clamoring for Elijah Moore to be a star. It wouldn't be a question to be like, wow, that guy is absolutely legit. It's just really unfortunate that he had to get nicked up. So his ability to be versatile on this Jets offense and line up on the outside, line up on the slot, line up as a wingback, line up all over the place, and be that crazy technician route runner that he is, in his hands and his chemistry with Zach Wilson. He also has star energy to him. Like when I went to meet him in Staten Island, like Tyson, he was very different, man. Like I did a lot of meet and greets before. I met a lot of Jets players, but Elijah Moore had this aura to him where, first of all, he was so awesome with the fans. He just had that energy where you can just feel that he can take on that star role. He can be that face of the Jets team as a wide receiver. So if there's one guy, it has to be Elijah Moore for me.
No, I agree, man. He has that it factor everybody talks about. You can just see it. It's just there and ready to go. Just comes down to health. But the other thing too that I'm wondering is, like, they have so many weapons on offense now where it's like you have the Garrett Wilson, you have Corey Davis. We haven't really talked about the tight end position at all, where that could be, that's probably one of the biggest stories on offense, if we're being completely honest, because we haven't had a tight end group in friggin' a decade, right? Dude. So now you go from none to 3.
Seriously, I mean, I've said it multiple times as well that the one criticism I've had on Joe Douglas with this time with the Jets has been his ignoring the tight end position. And 100%. I said going into the season, if he does not address this position in a big way, it's going to be a big problem because Zach Wilson needs tight ends and the system relies on tight ends. And what does he do? He doesn't sign one. He doesn't sign one and draft one. He signs 2 veterans and drafts 1. Like, that's what I'm talking about, Joe Douglas. You get one that went to the Super Bowl in CJ Uzomah that is going to be that veteran presence that's going to help out this team tremendously in so many aspects. Going to be that security blanket for Zach Wilson, going to be that red zone target. And then you get Tyler Conklin in the building, who was a guy that was absolutely lighting it up when given the
Yes,
opportunity
he was,
in
yep.
Minnesota, who is entering the prime of his career. Like, he's
Yep.
25 years old. If there's one guy, Tyson, that I think is going to be the most impactful at the tight end position, I might give it to Tyler Conklin.
Me too.
And then we have Jeremy Ruckert, who is going to be that guy that we're hopeful to develop to our, long-term tight end number one. And the depth that we have there is ridiculous. And the personnel that this Michael LaFleur likes to run, you can have all three of those tight ends on the field at the same time if you want to get creative. So absolutely awesome job by Joe Douglas to completely revamp one position group in one offseason.
Yeah, I'm most fascinated to see that in training camp myself. I'm a huge Tyler Conklin fan, man. I was begging for the Jets to get him. Even when they got Uzama, I'm like, he's still there. He's still there. I'm like,
Yeah.
get it. Like I was just begging. And it happened, which was great. I'm curious to see in training camp how they use them, the formations they use, because you have a hybrid fullback. You can do all kinds of different things, which is super exciting. But now the question I have for you is, you went to training camp last year. I went to training camp last year. I've been to a ton of practices over the years. In terms of physicality and stuff like that, you walked away like, well, that practice was kind of interesting, which is fine. It's year one. Do you think Saleh changes things up a little bit? And the reason why I ask is you're starting off the season against the AFC North, who is known for smash mouth, hard nosed football. They're bringing you're smacking day one. You're crashing helmets. Do you think Saleh changes anything up?
Yeah, it seems like Saleh is trending in the opposite direction in terms of physicality during camp, where he's very worried. I mean, he just went through his first season with the Jets, watching his top edge rusher go down that they paid a lot of money, watching their other edge rusher, Vinny Curry, being out for this season, like before the season begins, and seeing Mekhi Becton go down. I mean, all these guys were getting nicked up in training camp. So I feel like the training staff needs to do their job, first of all, to keep these guys healthy. Yep. And it's unfortunate that they have to, tone it back a little bit in camp, because you're right. They have to get used to that physicality. So I would like to see them balance it. Obviously, we don't want them to be full on, full pads and just gauntlet football every single practice, but I do want them to see them do that here and there. Trickle it in. Let them get used to the physicality, because the AFC North is a gauntlet. You're going to have 4 straight games of really hard-nosed football, and we're hopeful that we can get out of those first 4 games with at least 2 victories. That's the best case scenario in my eyes. So, it seems like, in the OTAs, they didn't even do any scrimmage work. They didn't have the trenches really go active because they're trying to tone back the injuries. So I don't really know, man. It'll be really interesting to see if they switch up the training camp approach, because it seems like Saleh is not on board of being all in physically during camp.
Yeah, and that's the most interesting thing for me, because if you look at the Jets last year, a lot of times in the first quarter, they came out flat or not as physical. The defense wasn't getting off the field. The offense was but defense, most importantly, is like, you got to come out and set the tone. Be that dominant, you tell the offense you're in for a long day physically. They weren't really doing that. And you do that against the Ravens, the Steelers, the Browns. Like, I don't care who their quarterback is. Their defense could push around the field. That changes the entire game. So I kind of want to see Saleh. You can scale things back, but when you have like live drills, have the live drills and get these guys, chomp at the bit. So week 1, they can match up, because that's going to be a difference, man. Like we're high about the offense, but the defense has so much to prove, man. Like last year was an utter disappointment. So now you have the talent, get them focused, clean up your scheme, and get the physicality in too.
Yeah, the defense has a really interesting, season ahead of them, because obviously we hired Robert Saleh, defensive minded, so we're expecting the defense to be at the forefront. And now all of a sudden we're like, wait, this offense is what's going to be the staple of this franchise. That's not what Jets fans are used to. The past decade plus has been the defense, has been the identity. It's been the Rex Ryan. It's been all these years, Todd Bowles. It's been defense. And now we're at an era in the NFL where you kind of need to score points, and we do have an electric offense on paper. But this defense, I really feel like on paper they did a great job this offseason, revamping the entire secondary, adding Sauce, adding DJ Reed, getting Jordan Whitehead here, retaining LaMarcus Joyner. That secondary is going to be legit, because I really feel like the secondary last year, I like Bryce Hall. I like Echols, what they did as year 1 and year 2 guys. But now for them as depth pieces is huge. Michael Carter II, I think, is a very underrated piece to this entire defense entering year number 2. I think that he can become one of the top young slot corners in the league. I really feel like he has that potential. And the big question mark is the linebackers, right? CJ Mosley, individual season last year-wise, phenomenal. But as a team, you can't really praise CJ Mosley, because if you're the linebacker, you're supposed to be the quarterback of the defense. And if the defense struggles, you're the reason for it. But if you look at what he did individually, he was balling out. So I feel like this is a big season for CJ Mosley. He's that veteran. He's that guy that has to keep everything together. And then Quincy Williams is another X factor for me, because last year he showed a lot of potential. At the same time, he was looking like a guy that was all over the place. He was overcommitting on tackles. He was missing reads in coverage. I feel like his mind was racing. And I think a lot of that had to do with him being signed to the team after training camp, right before the season began. So he didn't really have a full offseason to understand the playbook. Now he has that offseason underneath his system. So for Robert Saleh to go into this offseason with the defense they have to be physical, man. I like Quincy Williams physically wise. I love his ability to hit people in the nose. Jordan Whitehead, I also feel like Jets fans are going to fall in love with. He's going to be another version of Jamal Adams in terms of lining up in the box, playing quarterback spy in these mobile quarterbacks, blitzing the quarterback, playing deep. He's going to be that versatile chess piece. And I feel like Jordan Whitehead might be the guy that's going to really stand out the most on this defense this year.
Yeah, I actually wanted Whitehead. That was one of my top 3 guys I wanted in the offseason in terms of getting the safety. As a guy, because he's a thumper, he's a leader, he's like that. He's like Jamal Adams without the drama. You know what I mean? Yeah. He's gonna rally his teammates. He's gonna be a fiery guy and a great mentor as well. Now, you touched on the linebacker position, which I find interesting because if you had to say what's the one weakness on this team right now, we're all impressed with the depth all across the roster. But to me, the weakness could be the linebacker position, man, just in terms of, CJ Mosley, very good player, getting a little bit older. Quincy Williams showed a lot of talent, but can be a lot more consistent. He's got great speed. But after them, the depth is there, but they're young, unproven guys, man. You have Sherwood, you have Nasruddin. But it's like, can you consider that maybe an area of concern, and maybe that's why you're looking at Quan Alexander?
Yeah, it's definitely a position group to be concerned about. There's no doubt about it. I mean, listen, if this Jets team had every single position group where there's no concerns, then we'd be like, okay, we're going to the playoffs. Like, this is crazy. It's awesome that we have one, and you can mention the safety unit as well, as the 2 position groups as the weakest link. And then outside of those positions, I think Jets fans are happy with the roster outside of it. So I would focus on the positives and realize that we're not going for the Super Bowl this year. Obviously, we want to do that, but realistically speaking here, if there's only 1 to 2 position group where there's a big question mark around, that's a good job from Joe Douglas. He cannot fix every single position in one offseason. So but when it does come to the linebackers, man, it's true. Nasruddin and Sherwood, year 2 guys. Sherwood tears his Achilles last year, showed some type of potential, but didn't really get a good chance to play as a rookie because of his injury. Nasruddin was more of a special teams guy. So for those 2 guys to be the backups behind Mosley and Williams, if one of Mosley or Williams goes down, it's definitely going to be a problem because we have inexperienced guys. But I will say Saleh has spoke glowingly of Jamie and Sherwood to be his intelligence, his be able to process things and replace CJ Mosley for the long term. That's their vision. Now, will it happen? We have no idea if that will happen. And don't forget, Saleh comes from being a linebackers head coach. So that's his position out of all the position groups on the defense. The linebacker unit is Robert Saleh's specialty. So I feel like that's why Saleh's first draft class, they wanted to get Nasruddin and Sherwood to kind of develop those late round picks for the future. So I don't really have any high expectations for them, but if their name is called, I would love to see them have some type of impact because you're right, Tyson. The linebacker unit is very thin. Yeah,
and the other, go to the opposite side of that. Everybody keeps asking, like, what's the strength of the Jets team? And we talked about all the upgrades. To me, to be honest with you, I think their strength is depth. There's a lot of good position groups, but I think they can overcome injuries at a variety of groups, minus offensive line, which we'll get to next. But I think they can handle injuries at most positions where they couldn't do that in the past. So I think Joe Douglas did such a good job where it's like they have overall good depth with young talent that's on the rise. But what would you consider the Jets' strength?
Yeah, it's definitely depth and definitely young talent. I think the young talent is really what stands out to me the most. Like you talk about the last time the Jets were good, that was 2015. That year was all veterans. It was different. That's why it wasn't sustainable. It was Brandon Marshall at the end of his prime, who still had a lot of life left of him. It was Eric Decker. It was Ryan Fitzpatrick. It was Matt Forte. It was all these veterans that came to the Jets at the end of their careers that still had some juice left in them. This year, it's all about the young guys. It's not like we're going all in to win this year, and if we don't win this year, we're screwed for the future. Like we're going in this year to win, to prove to the league that we're a young, exciting team, and to develop for the future because we have last year's draft class who's going to be getting a lot of playing time this year and this year's draft class. So I think the youth movement, and you look at the offense, man, Joe Douglas completely revamped this entire offense, and the depth across every single position is amazing, and especially the playmakers. I think the playmakers is definitely the biggest strength for me because we were not used to the Jets regime prioritizing playmakers. It feels like as long as I've been a Jets fan, it's always been making excuses for the quarterback because they didn't have enough playmakers. And if you watch Flight 2022, when Joe Douglas drafted Breece Hall, he's like, playmakers, baby. Like he's prioritizing these playmakers. He's making sure that he adds them, even though we love Michael Carter. Michael Carter looks like a stud. Okay, we're going to get Breece Hall, who's even a better prospect than Michael Carter, and add him to the mix. Oh, we got Elijah Moore. He's great. But let's get Garrett Wilson, who's even a better prospect than Elijah Moore. Like, it just feels like there's going to continue to add to the playmakers, and the depth that they have there is just tremendous. And we know what Joe Douglas has done in the trenches as well. And I feel like the O-line and D-line could be a big-time strong suit for this team. But we'll talk about the O-line because I definitely feel like the depth there is a little bit concerning.
Yeah, and that's the one thing, too, is like we always beg for like game-breaking talent. It's one thing to have talent on the team, like game-breaking elite-level talent. He did a good job at egging that everywhere. All you got to do is get him in space, just get him the football. But I think if you look at the, weaknesses or areas of concern and maybe where the roster could be tinkered a little bit, to me, it's the offensive line, because we already talked about Becton. Obviously, Fant's coming off a good year, but I think you lack tackle depth. And I think, they brought in Riley Reed for an interview, but, I'm sure he's waiting for more money once training camp starts. But I think that's something that I would not mind seeing some upgrades done there, man, because you don't want to take any risk, especially when you have this potential on offense.
Yeah, I love their depth signing that they did with Grant Hermans
Yeah.
Interior offensive line. That's great. So I love the interior depth, but the tackle depth is definitely concerning. We were lucky that we got Morgan Moses last year, because think about where this team would be without Morgan Moses last year.
Yeah.
Mackay goes down, Moses slides in at right tackle, Fant goes to left tackle, and those are the bookend tackles for the season. So we don't really have that luxury right now. We don't have that veteran swing tackle. We have a rookie in Max Mitchell. We have Connor McDermott, and we have Chuma Edoga. Like, those guys don't really have a lot of excitement about those guys potentially playing football. So let's just hope Fant and Becton can stay healthy. But do not be shocked if Riley Reef becomes a Jet in training camp, because that would be huge, similar to the Morgan Moses signing. I really hope that happens.
Yeah, I completely agree, man. That's the one area where it's like, you had like those nice to haves. It'd be nice to upgrade certain positions. I mean, that's not a nice to have. That's a priority. Like, that's something that has to get done during training camp at some point. So they're going to training camp. We're both super excited. As of what's today, July 15th, what are some realistic expectations for this team? I've been talking to fans on all these fan interviews, and everybody's like 6 wins, 7 wins, 8 wins. And I'm like, well, I agree with that, but I also want to see a lot more competitive football. I want to see them win division games. Like, we got to stop. Like, we got to put a much better product on the field all throughout 17 games, not, play 4 good games at the end of the season. Like, you got to see a cumulative effort here, right?
I think it's more than just the win total. I think there's going to be a lot more to like when the season's all wrapped up, whether we have 6 wins to 10 wins range, it's going to be about, first of all, Zach Wilson. How is he progressing as a quarterback? Number 2, like you said, are we winning divisional games? Because that's going to be the biggest thing that Jets fans should look out for this season. Are we not competitive in these games? Are we winning these games? Because we need to beat the Dolphins. We need to beat the Patriots.
Yeah.
I'll give us the competitive against the Bills, because we know how good they are.
Yeah.
And another thing is the games that we do lose. How is it we're getting blown out?
Yep.
Is Zach Wilson playing well and we just ended up losing the game? Like, if we finish with 7 wins and we're 7-10, but 4 or 5 of those losses are Zach Wilson, 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, him being a really great quarterback, but just the other quarterback had a better game, or the defense kind of collapsed and the team looked good. They were playing well together, and we just were not able to find out a way to win. But we only win 7 games and we missed the playoffs. But Zach Wilson looked good and we were competitive in those games. That's more important to me, because I feel like this team is about building the chemistry and building, a winning mindset. And I feel like them gaining that success together is going to be huge. So I feel like it's less of the win total and more of how they're losing those games when they do lose. Are they getting blown out or not? Because last year it was terrible. We're on Thursday Night Football against the Colts getting blown out. Like, that cannot happen again. We need to make sure that we hold this team accountable and they're not getting blown out and they're competitive in each game. And to finish it off, Tyson, I think that the most important thing for me as well is playing meaningful games in December, because I feel like I do not want to be in December thinking this game's the season's over. Let's lose on purpose for draft picks. Like, I can't go through that again. I really can't go
Try
through
being old like me, man.
of just people saying, "Oh, Richie, but why should we win this game? Because we're out of the playoffs. So let's get a better draft pick." I can't go through that again. So I hopefully we're in meaningful games in December. Yeah,
now I agree with your last point too about how you lose. Like, if they're losing like the Justin Herbert Chargers were, where there was like high flying, they're losing 38-35, but you're seeing all the potential of Zach Wilson. You're seeing all the offense. You're seeing all that, or like Joe Burrow shootouts. I'm completely cool with that, dude. Not that I enjoy losing, but you're like, you know what? This team is building. We're progressing. We're not a laughing stock on offense, and now we're close to that next step. So I think that's completely it's vital. We can't. I'm with you, dude. If we go through December, November like last year, I'll be out of my mind. I can't take tank for this. We need that. Talking draft in November, like it just gets exhausting. So
I do not want to talk the NFL draft,
because then by January we're already drafted out. Like, we already know that. Like, we've already analyzed the draft by January. It's like, it's ridiculous. So the last question I have for you is: we talked about everybody, players all over the field. Joe Douglas, how much pressure's on Robert Saleh this year, and not in terms of his job, in terms of they add a lot of talent. The expectations are much higher, dude. And it's a lot of young, exciting players, which could be a lot of big personalities. I mean, you're adding, Garrett Wilson's, a big prominent player. Sauce Gardner, we talked about, Jermaine Johnson, Clemens. These guys are all big. Plus, you have some big names coming in, free agents. Is there pressure on Saleh to keep everybody intact? Because let's be honest, dude, these guys read the papers. They see social media. The Jets could be one of the most improved teams in the NFL. Bet the over to 5.5. Like, they're talk of the town right now because the Giants are kind of boring and not really going anywhere. is there pressure on Saleh to keep everybody even keeled and keep this team moving forward?
Yeah, I think there's going to be pressure on whoever the head coach is with the Jets because of the New York media, regardless of who it is. And especially for him going off the season that he had last year, he committed to the youth last year. And I respect him for that. He really said, probably before the season, he even told Joe Douglas and the Johnsons, like, listen, we're going to commit to the youth. The season might not go as planned. There's going to be a lot of negative things about this team, but this is going to benefit us in the future. So we're going to move on from Bless Austin, and we're going to not sign a veteran corner so we can give Bryce Hall and Brennan Eccles the opportunity to play. And, obviously the defense was last in the league because they really committed to that youth movement. But now you add all these players in free agency, you add all these things. Joe Douglas in the front office has done their job. Now it is all up to Robert Saleh to connect the puzzles, connect these chess pieces together, because it feels like, this team on paper, like, could make a lot of noise. And that's the thing. And you see around the league, you see the media hyping up the Jets. And now there's, unfortunately, I hate this, but there's expectations for the Jets. I usually like being the team that no one's talking about. And then we come out of nowhere. And now we're expecting to be something. So if we're not something, it's going to be a way bigger deal. But Robert Saleh is a coach that's well respected around the league. He's a player's coach. He develops relationships very well. And I think Jeff Ulbrich is going to be a big X factor as well, because he's the guy that's calling the plays on defense and stuff. But there's no doubt that Robert Saleh is the CEO. He has to make sure he's controlling all three phases of the ball, and also make sure that he develops his game in terms of being a game manager, because there were some times last year he called a timeout and you're scratching your head, why'd you do that? And that wasn't just once, that was multiple times where you're like, why'd you call that timeout there? So, he learned on the fly last year as a rookie head coach. And I think there's definitely pressure on him for sure. And I'm expecting him to prove to Jets fans that we got the right guy.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing to yell, all gas, no break and all that stuff, but now you got to start proving that on the field where your team is playing to that mantra that you keep telling everybody. It's just, I think there's a lot of pressure on him, to be honest with you. Not that his job's on the line, but you've got to really show that you're the coach for the Jets. You can mold this team and start winning games this year. We can't keep pushing it back like 4 games, 5 games, we'll win next year. You got to kind of start getting results this year. And my final question is, bro, you got this Jets Dolphins thing going on there. What kind of, you got tailgate game tickets? What's going on over here?
Yeah, so first time doing this. It's called Jets Media Day. A collab with the Jets.
You're a big shot, man. Am I getting autographs when I go to this?
Nah, dude. We're going to be together week 1. I want your autograph too. You've been doing this longer than me. But yeah, man, it's going to be a great time. We bought out like a whole couple rows in a section, and it's going to be during the Dolphins game. I collaborated with a tailgating company called Ticket Bash, so they're going to be throwing the tailgate for us, and it's like we're going to be included in there. So if you're interested, let me know. But I'm excited, man. I'm really excited to do this. And the Jets were very they allowed me the opportunity to do this, and they're giving us post-field access after the game. So I really hope we win, because that's going to be Tyson. If we lose that game, the energy on the field's not going to be the same if we win that game.
Like I want to go on the field,
right?
Like they missed the play right here. No, that's awesome, dude. Well, first of all, congratulations, man. You're doing a phenomenal job. You did the thing with Jeremy Rucker. Your channel is just awesome. So if anybody, which everybody already knows you, but if they don't know where to find you, how can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me over on Instagram and Twitter at NYJets_media, or on YouTube, it's just Jets Media, just covering the Jets. Like, I'm just like a fan, like any of you guys, just like to bring the community together and connect to fans all over the world. And it's really an awesome thing, especially to be able to connect with former content creators like yourself, Tyson. It's awesome to do this. Been following your channel since you started. So it's really awesome to finally start collabing with you. I always looked up to you and I thought like, oh, wow, that's awesome. Like, I love his stuff. Even when I was extremely young, like I'm 24 right now. So, I've been watching you forever. Whenever you started, and I was like a little young kid. So I really do appreciate you showing all the love to me, but what you're doing on your show is phenomenal as well. So keep it up.
Bro, you're changing the game, my friend. You're doing an awesome job. I can't wait to hang out you week 1. Maybe we'll see you at training camp, whatever else. So thank you again for your time, man. And make sure you guys are all following this guy, but make sure you follow Richie, man. You're doing a great job, dude. So thank you again.
Appreciate that. Let's go Jets.
Let's go.